He was worth $9 billion, but he couldn't buy the one thing he desperately needed: someone who would love him without knowing his name. So Marcus Hale made a choice that would shock everyone who knew him. He walked into his own brand new billion-dollar bank, dressed as a janitor. Fake name. Mop in hand. Invisible. And that's when he saw her, the woman with kind eyes and empty pockets, fighting for a dream no one believed in. She had no idea the man cleaning her table could change her life with a single phone call. But he didn't want her gratitude. He wanted her heart. What happened next will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, power, and the masks we all wear. Because sometimes, you have to lose everything you are to find out who you were meant to be. Before we begin, if you love real stories about second chances, forgiveness, and the kind of love that survives the impossible, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss what happens next. Marcus Hale stood alone on the 53rd floor of his newest masterpiece. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Boston skyline like a painting. The bank below him gleamed with marble, gold trim, and cutting-edge technology. It was flawless, modern, powerful, just like everything else he owned. But as he stared at his reflection in the glass, all he saw was exhaustion. 38 years old, billions in the bank, and not a single person in his life who loved him for who he really was. They loved his name, his empire, his potential. But Marcus, the man underneath it all, he wasn't sure anyone had ever met him. His lawyer had laughed when Marcus told him the idea. His CFO thought he'd lost his mind. But Marcus didn't care. He'd made his decision. He would go undercover in his own bank. Not as the billionaire founder. Not as the untouchable CEO. As a cleaner. Someone invisible. Someone no one would try to impress. Someone who could watch, listen, and learn who people really were when they thought no one important was watching. He wanted to see the truth. And maybe, just maybe, find someone who could see him too. Do you believe it's possible to find real love when you're that wealthy? Or does money poison every connection before it even starts? Tell me what you think. 3 days later, Marcus walked through the employee entrance, wearing a navy blue jumpsuit with the name Ray stitched across the pocket. His hair was hidden under a worn baseball cap. His glasses were plain. His posture, slightly slouched. He looked ordinary, forgettable, perfect. The morning supervisor barely glanced at him as she handed him a clipboard and a bucket. "You'll be covering the main floor today," she said flatly. "Bathrooms, lobby, executive offices on rotation. Keep your head down and stay out of the way during business hours." Marcus nodded. He'd been invisible before in his life. Back when he was a kid, in Pittsburgh, with holes in his shoes, and a single mother working 3 jobs. Back before the money, before the power. Before he built walls so high no one could climb them. Now, decades later, he was choosing to disappear again. And it felt strangely freeing. The bank was breathtaking. Even from the inside. Even as a man pushing a mop across Italian tile, Marcus couldn't help but feel a flicker of pride. This place was his vision, his risk, his legacy. Customers moved through the lobby like actors on a stage. Tellers smiled with rehearsed charm. Loan officers spoke in hushed, polished tones. Everything ran like clockwork. But Marcus wasn't watching the systems. He was watching the people. The teller who rolled her eyes the second a customer turned away. The manager who spoke sweetly to clients but snapped at his assistant when no one was looking. The security guard scrolling his phone instead of watching the door. It fascinated him and disappointed him. He'd built a temple of professionalism, but underneath it all, people were still just people. Flawed, distracted, human. Then he saw her. She sat alone near the far window. A leather portfolio balanced on her lap, and a coffee cup cooling beside her. Her clothes were simple. A grey blazer, dark jeans, scuffed flats. Her hair was pulled into a low ponytail, a few strands falling loose around her face. She wasn't looking at her phone. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was reading. A worn paperback with a cracked spine, the kind you read over and over because it means something. Marcus slowed his steps. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the way she sat so still in a room full of motion. Maybe it was the softness in her expression, like she'd found a moment of peace in the chaos. Or maybe it was just that she didn't look at him like he was invisible. When he passed her table, wiping down the corner with his rag, she glanced up and smiled. Not a polite smile, not a dismiss the help smile, a real one. "Thank you," she said gently. Her voice was warm, kind. Marcus froze for half a second, then nodded. "Just doing my job," he said quietly. She went back to her book. He moved on. But something in his chest had shifted. Her name was Elena Marsh. Marcus learned that later, after overhearing her introduction to one of the loan officers. She was there applying for a small business loan. A small one by his standards. $75,000 to expand her community bookstore in Rochester. Then, expand a vision. Talking about vision, I hope you see the vision in the story as follows. Enjoy and remember to concentrate on the story. Let's continue. The officer looked bored. Elena looked hopeful. Marcus cleaned the glass door nearby, listening. "We'll review your application," the officer said in a tone that suggested he wouldn't. "But I'll be honest, Miss Marsh, your credit's decent, but your collateral is weak. A bookstore isn't exactly a booming industry." Elena's smile didn't falter, but Marcus saw her fingers tighten around her portfolio. "Books matter," she said quietly. "Especially in neighborhoods like mine. Kids need a safe place. Families need access to stories." "Sang-zan," the officer shrugged. "I'm sure they do. But banks need guarantees." He stood, dismissing her with a handshake that lasted less than a second. Elena thanked him anyway. She gathered her things, shoulders a little lower than before, and walked toward the exit. Marcus watched her go, and for the first time in years, he felt something stir inside him. Not pity, respect. She hadn't begged, hadn't made a scene. She'd simply stood her ground with grace. He didn't know her story yet, but he wanted to. Marcus couldn't get her out of his head. That night, alone in his penthouse overlooking the harbor, he sat with a glass of scotch he didn't drink and thought about Elena Marsh. Her quiet dignity, her belief in something bigger than profit margins, the way she'd smiled at him like he mattered. He pulled up her loan application on his private server. Elena Marie Marsh, 32 years old, owner of Marsh and Pages, a small independent bookstore in Rochester that had been open for 6 years. The financials were tight but honest. She wasn't asking for luxury. She was asking for survival, for growth, for a chance to serve a community that most banks had written off. The loan officer's notes were dismissive. High risk, low return, recommend, denial. Marcus stared at the screen. One click, and he could approve it himself. But that wasn't why he was doing this. He didn't want to be her savior from behind a desk. He wanted to know her, as Ray, as no one, as a man she might actually let in. The next morning, Marcus returned to the bank in his janitor's uniform. He moved through his tasks with quiet efficiency, eyes always searching. Elena didn't come in, or the next day, or the day after that. By the 4th day, Marcus started to wonder if he'd imagined the weight of that brief encounter. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, she walked back in. Her hair was damp, her jacket spotted with rain. She carried a canvas bag over one shoulder and the same worn book tucked under her arm. But this time, she didn't sit. She walked straight to the customer service desk, her expression calm but determined. Marcus adjusted his route, pushing his cleaning cart closer. "I'm here to follow up on my loan application," Elena said to the representative. "I submitted it last week." Elena Marsh. Elena Marsh. The woman typed slowly, barely looking up. One moment. Elena waited. Marcus pretended to wipe down a brass railing 10 feet away. The representative frowned at her screen. "It says here your application was denied. Letter should have gone out yesterday." Letter. Letter. Elena's face didn't change, but Marcus saw her fingers curl tight around the strap of her bag. "Can I ask why?" "Insufficient collateral. High-risk industry. Standard stuff." The representative's tone was robotic, indifferent. Elena nodded slowly. Is there an appeal process? You can reapply in 6 months with additional assets. 6 months. Marcus knew what that meant. By then, her bookstore would probably be gone. Elena thanked the woman and turned to leave. And that's when it happened. As she walked toward the door, a man in an expensive suit stepped backward without looking, slamming into her shoulder. Her bag hit the floor. Books, papers, and receipts spilled across the marble like fallen leaves. The man didn't apologize. He barely glanced at her before walking away. Phone pressed to his ear. Elena knelt immediately, cheeks flushed, scrambling to gather everything. No one helped. People stepped around her like she was part of the floor. Marcus didn't think. He just moved. He set down his mop, crossed the lobby, and knelt beside her. "Here," he said quietly, gathering a stack of children's books that had slid toward a planter. "Let me help." Elena looked up, surprise flickering across her face. Then recognition. "You," she said softly. "From last week." Marcus nodded, handing her the books. "Ray," he said. The fake name tasted strange on his tongue. Ray. 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 Elena. Her smile was small but genuine. Together, they collected the scattered pieces of her life. A flyer for a community reading event. A handwritten list of book orders. A photo of a little girl holding a stuffed bear. Marcus handed her the photo carefully. "Your daughter?" Elena's expression softened. "My niece. Lily. She's 7. The bookstore's her favorite place in the world." There was something fragile in the way she said it, like it might not be there much longer. Marcus wanted to ask, but before he could, Elena stood, brushing off her knees. "Thank you, Ray. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to." She studied him for a moment, head tilted slightly. "You're kind," she said. "That's rare." Marcus felt something crack open inside him. He'd been called a lot of things. Brilliant, ruthless, visionary. But kind? Not in a long time. "So are you," he said. Elena laughed softly, shaking her head. "I don't know about that. I just got turned down for a loan and I'm about to lose everything I've worked for. Kindness doesn't pay the bills." Kindness. Kindness. Her voice was light, but her eyes told a different story. Marcus's chest tightened. "I'm sorry," he said. And he meant it. Elena shrugged, slinging her bag back over her shoulder. "It's life, right? You keep trying until you can't anymore." She started toward the door. Then she paused, turned back. "Hey, Ray? Yeah? Do you like books?" The question caught him off guard. Yeah. Elena smiled. "Then you should stop by sometime. Martian Pages, Rochester. I can't promise much, but I make a decent cup of coffee." It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't pity. It was an invitation. A thread of connection. Marcus nodded, his heart doing something it hadn't done in years. "I'd like that." "Good." And then she was gone. Marcus stood in the center of the lobby, mop in hand, surrounded by strangers. But for the first time in a decade, he didn't feel alone. He felt seen. Not as a billionaire. Not as a boss. As a man who'd knelt on the floor to help someone the world had ignored. And it meant everything. That night, Marcus made a decision. He wasn't going to save her from a distance. He wasn't going to write a check and disappear. He was going to show up. As Ray. As a man with nothing to offer but his time, his attention, and his truth. Even if she never knew who he really was. He had to try. 2 days later, Marcus walked into Martian Pages for the first time. The bookstore was tucked between a laundromat and a corner market, small and unassuming from the outside. But inside, it was magic. Shelves lined every wall, crammed with books of every genre. A wooden ladder leaned against the far corner. String lights hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over everything. A reading nook sat near the window, piled with pillows and blankets, and behind the counter stood Elena. She looked up when the door chimed, and her face lit up. "Ray." She said his name like she'd been hoping he'd come. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "You said you made decent coffee," he said. I wanted to see if that was true. "Ah," Elena laughed. "Bold move. Come on." She poured him a cup from a small pot near the register, handed it to him in a chipped mug that said, "Read more, worry less." Marcus took a sip. It was terrible, but he smiled anyway. "Best I've ever had." Elena raised an eyebrow. You're a bad liar, Ray. Maybe, he admitted. But I'm a good guest. She grinned. And just like that, the wall between them began to crumble. Marcus started coming to the bookstore every day after his shift. At first, he told himself it was research, learning about the business, understanding her world. But that was a lie. He came because of her. Elena never asked why a janitor spent his evenings in a bookstore. She just smiled when he walked in, poured him terrible coffee, and talked about books, about her niece, about the neighborhood kids who came in after school with no money but left with stories anyway. I let them read for free, she admitted one evening, restocking a shelf. I know. It's bad business. But some of them don't have books at home. Quote, Marcus watched her hands move gently over the spines. That's not bad business, he said. That's purpose. Elena glanced at him. Something soft in her eyes. Most people don't see it that way. Most people are wrong. She smiled, and Marcus felt it again. That pull. If you were falling for someone but living a lie, would you confess or stay silent? I'd love to know what you'd do. Reporting Wellenstand, and Wellenstand Alazan, in Kroof, and Wellenstand Alazan Dalazan 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 Dalazan. Weeks passed. Marcus learned her routines, the way she hummed while shelving books, how she always gave the kids the better snacks, the tired way she rubbed her neck at closing time. He started staying later, helping her clean up. She protested at first. You already work all day, Ray. You don't have to do this. One come to two. 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 One come to. I want to. One night, as they stacked chairs, Elena stopped. Why are you really here? Marcus's heart skipped. What do you mean? You're smart, observant. You don't talk like someone who cleans floors for a living. He met her eyes. Maybe I just like the company. Elena held his gaze, then nodded slowly. Me too. The air between them shifted. Marcus knew he was in dangerous territory, but he couldn't stop. Then came the eviction notice. Marcus arrived one evening to find Elena sitting on the floor, paper in her hands, tears on her cheeks. He dropped beside her. What happened? Her voice cracked. Landlord selling the building. I have 60 days. Marcus's chest tightened. Can you move locations? Not without money I don't have. She looked at him, eyes red. It's over, Ray. I tried. I really tried. I really tried. Marcus wanted to tell her the truth, wanted to fix it all with one phone call. But he couldn't. Not yet. Instead, he took her hand. Then we fight. Elena blinked. We. You're not alone, Marcus said quietly. Not anymore. She squeezed his hand and leaned her head on his shoulder. Marcus closed his eyes. He was falling, and there was no going back. Marcus couldn't watch her lose everything, not when he had the power to stop it. He sat in his penthouse that night, staring at his phone. One call, one transfer. He could save the bookstore, and she'd never know. But that felt wrong, like a betrayal of what they'd built. She trusted Ray, a janitor with nothing but time and care. If she discovered the truth now, she'd think it was all a game, that he'd been playing her. And maybe he had been, not intentionally. But the lie was still there, growing between them like a shadow. The next evening, Marcus arrived at the bookstore to find it packed. Elena had organized a community fundraiser. Local families, kids, neighbors, everyone buying books, donating what they could. It was beautiful and heartbreaking, because Marcus knew it wouldn't be enough. Elena worked the register with a brave smile, but he saw the exhaustion in her eyes. When the crowd thinned, she found him in the back corner. Thank you for coming, she said softly. Always. She looked at him for a long moment. Then, without warning, she kissed his cheek. You've been my anchor through this, Ray. I don't know what I would have done without you. Marcus's heart shattered. He couldn't do this anymore. Elena, I need to tell you something. She tilted her head. What is it? He opened his mouth, and the door chimed. A man in a suit stepped inside. Marcus recognized him instantly. His own attorney. The man's eyes widened when he saw Marcus in a janitor's uniform. Mr. Hale? The room went silent. Elena turned slowly. What did he just call you? Marcus felt the world collapse. Elena, Mr. Hale, she repeated, voice shaking. As in Marcus Hale, the billionaire who owns the bank. The attorney stammered an apology and left. But the damage was done. Elena stared at Marcus like she'd never seen him before. You lied to me. I can explain. You're him. This whole time. Her voice cracked. Was this some kind of experiment? Some rich guy's game? No, Marcus said desperately. It wasn't like that. Then what was it? Tears filled her eyes. I trusted you, Ray. Or whoever you are. I'm still me, Marcus said. Everything between us was real. Elena shook her head. I don't even know who you are. She turned away. Please leave. Elena, leave. Her voice broke on the word. Marcus stood frozen. Then he walked out into the night. Alone. Marcus didn't go back to his penthouse. He sat in his car outside the bookstore until the lights went out. Until Elena locked the door and walked away into the darkness. He'd lost her. Not because he didn't care, but because he'd cared too much to be honest. For 3 days, Marcus stayed away. He returned to his real life. Meetings, contracts, boardrooms, but none of it mattered. Every moment, he thought of her. The way she laughed. The way she saw good in people. The way she'd made him feel human again. His CFO noticed. You've been distracted. Marcus stared out his office window. I hurt someone I care about. So fix it. I don't know if I can. His CFO shrugged. You're a billionaire. You can do anything. But Marcus shook his head. Not this. Money can't fix this. For the first time in his life, wealth meant nothing. On the 4th day, Marcus made a decision. He couldn't undo the lie, but he could still do what mattered. He called his attorney. I want to buy the building where Marsh and Pages is located. The one in Rochester? Yes, buy it. Set up a long-term lease for Elena Marsh at a rate she can afford. 10 years. Locked in. 2-3. 2-3. 2-3. 2-3. 2-3. 2-3-3. 2-3. 2-3. 2-3. 2-3. 2-3. 2-3. Under your name? No, Marcus said firmly. Anonymous trust. She can never know. It came from me. Understood. Marcus hung up. It wasn't redemption, but it was right. Then he did something he'd never done before. He wrote her a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A handwritten letter, on plain paper. Elena, I don't expect you to forgive me. I lied about who I was because I wanted to know what it felt like to be seen for who I am, not what I own. But in hiding myself, I hurt you. And that's the one thing I can't forgive myself for. You taught me something I'd forgotten. That kindness isn't weakness. That purpose matters more than profit. That love isn't something you buy, it's something you earn. I didn't earn yours, but you earned mine. I hope your bookstore survives. I hope the neighborhood kids keep finding stories. I hope Lily always has her favorite place in the world. And I hope someday you can think of Ray without anger. Because even though he wasn't real, what I felt for you was Marcus. He sealed the envelope, addressed it, and left it on the bookstore's doorstep before dawn. 2 weeks later, Elena received a letter from a law firm. The building had been purchased. Her rent reduced to almost nothing. 10-year lease, guaranteed. She sat in the empty bookstore, hands shaking, reading the document over and over. Anonymous donor. But she knew. Deep down, she knew. Another week passed. Marcus forced himself to move forward. He threw himself into work. Started a literacy foundation. Funded community centers. He did good, but he did it alone. Then, one evening, his assistant buzzed him. There's someone here to see you. No appointment. Tell them I'm busy. She said her name is Elena Marsh. Marcus's heart stopped. Send her in. The door opened. And there she was. Same grey blazer. Same worn bag. But her eyes were different, softer. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Elena set a to-go cup on his desk. "Terrible coffee," she said quietly. "Just how you like it." Marcus's throat tightened. "Elena, let me talk first." He nodded. She took a breath. "I was angry. Really angry. I know, but I've been thinking about who you were when you were with me. Ray. The guy who helped me pick up my books. Who stayed late to stack chairs. Who listened. Her voice softened. That guy was real, wasn't he? Marcus met her eyes. "He was the most real I've been in years." Elena nodded slowly. "The building. The lease. That was you." "The lease. Yes. You didn't have to do that." "I did," Marcus said. "Not to win you back. But because it was right." Elena stepped closer. "I don't know if I can trust you yet. I understand. But I'd like to try." Marcus's heart lifted. "Really?" Elena smiled, small but genuine. "You helped me when you had nothing to gain. You saw me when I felt invisible. Maybe you were pretending to be someone else. But you showed me who you really are. You helped me when I felt invisible. You helped me when you had nothing to be someone else." She reached for his hand. "So, let's start over. Hi, I'm Elena." Marcus took her hand, warmth flooding through him. "Marcus. But my friends call me Ray." "Marcus. Marcus. Marcus. Marcus." Elena laughed. A real laugh. The kind that heals. "Okay, Ray. Want to get some real coffee this time?" "I'd love that." 6 months later, Marsh and Pages had expanded into the space next door. New shelves. More books. A dedicated children's section. And every Saturday, Marcus showed up. Not as the Billionaire CEO, just as Ray. The guy who restocked shelves, read to kids, and made Elena laugh. They took it slow. Honest conversations. Real trust. Building something that money couldn't buy. One evening, as they locked up together, Elena leaned against him. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "I spent years wishing someone would see my dream. Turns out, I just needed someone to see me." "My seem avented ask." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "I see you. I always will." She looked up at him, eyes bright. "And I see you too. All of you." For the first time in his life, Marcus felt whole. Not because of what he owned, but because of who he'd become. A man who'd learned that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in moments like this. In love that's earned, not bought. In being known, truly known, and still chosen. What did you feel in this ending? Hope, healing, or something else? Share your thoughts below. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button and let me know you felt something real. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought. Did Marcus deserve a second chance? Would you have forgiven him? I read every single one, and I love hearing your perspective. And if you're new here, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Because every week, I bring you tales of love, redemption, and the beautiful mess of being human. This community is built on people like you who believe in second chances and the power of real connection. So stick around. Your next favorite story is just one click away. Thank you for listening. And remember, true love isn't about perfection. It's about seeing someone's flaws and choosing them anyway. I'll see you in the next one.